Greetings to one and all. I, Gargi Gupta, Faculty of Psychology at SRM International School, Jagatpura, Jaipur, welcomes you all to our official YouTube channel. In this subject video, we are going to study about the psychological disorders, which is part of Chapter 4 of NCERT Grade 12 Psychology. So let's see the table of contents. In this video, you are going to learn about the four important topics, that is, concept of abnormality and psychological disorders, the historical background of the abnormal behavior, classification of psychological disorders, and what are the different factors underlying abnormal behavior. Let's see that what are the different concepts of abnormality and psychological disorders. In this, we are going to learn the two subtopics. First, what is abnormality and what are the different approaches to study the abnormal behavior. Now, on the slide, you can see the definition of abnormality. Most definitions have certain common feature often called the 4Ds of abnormality. So, there are 4Ds of abnormality. The first is deviance, second, distress, third, dysfunction, and fourth as danger. So, deviance means different, extreme, unusual, or even bizarre behavior of an individual. Distress means unpleasant and upsetting to the person and to the others. Dysfunction refers to interfering with the person's ability to carry out daily activities in a constructive way. Danger, possibly dangerous to the person or to others. So when we want to define that what is abnormality, we will talk about these 4Ds. That if the person's behavior is showing some deviance, is showing distress, dysfunction, or danger to him or the other person, we term it as abnormality. So next time when you will define abnormality, it is deviation from the normal behavior. It is unpleasant or upsetting to the person and to the others. It interferes with the person's ability to carry out the daily activities, and it can be dangerous to the person or to the others. Now, let's talk about the different approaches to study the abnormal behavior. The definition is a useful starting point from which we can explore psychological abnormality. Since the word abnormal literally means away from the normal, that's what we studied, right? Deviation from the normal. It implies deviation from some clearly defined norms or standards. So every society is having their own standards or own norms. If an individual is deviating from that, he or she is considered abnormal. It implies deviation from some clearly defined norms or standards. In psychology, we have no ideal model or even normal model of behavior to use as base of a comparison. For example, if I'm living in India, I am going to have different societal norms. Those norms are not going to be the same in the Western countries. So there the normal behavior is going to be different as compared to the normal behavior considered in India. Therefore, in psychology, we do not have any normal model or any ideal model. So various approaches have been used in distinguishing between the normal and the abnormal behavior. For these approaches, there emerged two basic and conflicting views, that is deviation from the social norms, and the second, that is the maladaptive behavior. So let's see what the approach deviation from social norms talk about. Each society has norms which are stated or unstated rules for proper conduct. Behaviors, thoughts, and emotions that break societal norms are called abnormal. That's what I explained. That if in India there are some set of rules for a society which are considered as the norms or the standard norms for the individuals of the society, the same are not going to be for the Western countries. So a society's norms grow from its particular culture, its history, values, institutions, habits, skills, technology, and arts. For example, in India, if we see the social norm is to greet your elders whensoever you meet them. So, if an individual doesn't do that, that is considered abnormal. That why this person or an individual is not greeting the elder. Whereas in the Western countries, this type of tradition is not there. So, there, if an individual is not greeting the elder, it is going to be considered as a normal behavior. Now, the maladaptive approach, well-being is not simply maintenance and survival, but also includes the growth and fulfillment. That is the actualization of the potential. According to this criteria, conforming behavior can be seen abnormal if it is maladaptive. That is, if it interferes with the optimal functioning and the growth. For example, if a student in the class prefers to remain silent even when he or she has question in his her or mind, so describing behavior as maladaptive implies that a problem exists. It also suggests that vulnerability in the individual, inability to cope, or exceptional stress in the environment have led to problems in life. So, what we are considering as maladaptive, that if a student is silent, even if he or she is having question, that is not normal. That is abnormal behavior. Because normal behavior would have been that the child is sitting in a class, he or she face some problem, he or she needs to discuss with the teacher. Moving forward to the historical background. Under the heading Historical Background, we will be touching the various subheadings, that is ancient stories, biological or organic approach, psychological approach, organismic approach, Middle Ages, Renaissance period, Age of Reason and Enlightenment, and interactional or biopsychosocial approach. My dear students, there are various ancient stories about the abnormal behavior. One of them says that the operation of supernatural and magical forces such as evil spirits, which we call as bhoot pret, or the devil that we call as shaitan, are responsible for the abnormal behavior of an individual. Another story talks about the exorcism, that is, removing the evil that resides in the individual through counter magic and prayer. You can see a lot of time exorcism even takes place now in India. In many societies, the shaman or medicine man, that is Oja, is a person who is believed to have contact with the supernatural forces and is the medium through which spirits communicate with human beings. Through the shaman, an affiliated person can learn which spirits are responsible for her or his problem and what needs to be done to appease them. My dear students, these are just the ancient stories and is having no relation with the actual psychology or the science of psychology. These are just the stories that were created to explain the behavior of an individual as abnormal. Moving forward towards the biological approach. Biological approach explains the abnormal behavior in such a way that individuals behave strangely because their bodies and their brains are not working properly. For example, if a person is showing some abnormal behavior, it is a possibility according to the biological approach that his brain and his body are not coordinating well. In the modern era, there is evidence that body and brain processes have been linked to many types of maladaptive behavior. For certain types of disorders, correcting these defective biological processes results in improved functioning. For example, if a person got a head injury, there's a possibility that he or she will exhibit some abnormal behavior. Might not be at a good great extent, but a bit of behavioral change can be observed. Next is the psychological approach. According to this view of approach, psychological problems are caused by inadequacies in the way an individual thinks, feels, or perceives the world. For example, if I'm going to perceive the world in a very negative way, that everyone is conspiring against me, everyone wants to do something or the other bad to me, automatically my behavior will become negative towards everyone around me. So that's what psychological approach explains the abnormal behavior, that these problems are caused by how we are thinking, how we are feeling, or how we are perceiving about the world or the individuals around us. Next, to the organismic approach. In the ancient Western world, it was philosophers, physicians of ancient Greece such as Hippocrates, Socrates, and in particular Plato, who developed the organismic approach. So now the first thing that we have learned, the organismic approach was developed by the philosopher physicians of ancient Greece such as Hippocrates and Socrates. What they viewed abnormal behavior as arising out of conflicts between emotion and reason. So, if an individual is behaving in such a way that it is arising a conflict between the emotion and the reason, then that is called the abnormal behavior. For example, if the person is feeling like crying, so here the emotion is crying, but the reason behind is something positive. The emotion and reason are not according to each other. So according to the organismic approach, if there is no relationship between the emotion and reason, it is considered to be disturbed behavior. Next, the Galen elaborated on the role of the four humors in personal character and temperament. According to him, the material world was made up of four elements, with earth, air, fire, and water, which combine to form four essential body fluids, with blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. So according to him, these were the fluids which were responsible for the temperament of an individual. If a person is going to have the body fluid as blood, he or she is going to exhibit a different type of temperament as compared to those having the black bile, yellow bile, or phlegm. So this was the theory given by Galen to characterize the temperament in the individuals. Each of these fluids was seen to be responsible for a different temperament. Imbalances among the humors were believed to cause various disorders. For example, if a person is having less release of black bile or excessive release of yellow bile, then there is going to be some imbalance among the humors and will lead to the cause of a disorder. This is similar to the Indian notion of the three doshas of Vat, Pitta, and Kapha, which were mentioned in the Atharva Ved and Ayurvedic text. So, in this slide, we learned about the various theories related to the organismic approach. The first, which was given by the Hippocrates and the Socrates, which talked about that the relationship between emotion and the reason is not very nice, and if that is having some conflict, it is going to be result in the disturbed behavior. Then next we talked about the Galen, who talked about the four humors and told us that the world was made up of four elements, and so is our essential body fluids, and if there is some imbalance among these humors, this can cause the various disorders. The similar notion was given by the Atharved and the Ayurvedic text, that there are three doshas, Vat, Pitta, and Kapha, which causes the disorder as per the behavior. Now, let's talk about the progress which was done during the Middle Age and Renaissance period. In the Middle Ages, demonology and superstition gained renewed importance in the explanation of abnormal behavior. Demonology related to belief that people with mental problems were evil, and there are numerous instances of witch hunts during this period. During the early Middle Ages, the Christian spirit of charity prevailed, and Saint Augustine wrote extensively about feelings, mental anguish, and conflict. This laid the groundwork for modern psychodynamic theories of abnormal behavior. So during the Middle Ages, it was considered that it was the demons, or there were a lot of superstitions due to which there was, a lot of abnormal behavior. So people wrote about it even in the Middle Age, early Middle Age, the Christian spirit of charity, that is Saint Augustine, he wrote a lot about the feelings, the conflict, the mental anxiety, that what these things are going on, and all this superstition and the demonology, which became the explanation for the normal behavior, became the groundwork or the foundation for the modern psychodynamic theory. Whereas in the Renaissance period, it was marked by the increased humanism and curiosity about behavior. In Middle Ages, where people were talking about the demonology, superstition, witch hunting and all, the Renaissance period had some growth and people were talking about the humanism and curiosity about behavior. John Ware emphasized psychological conflict and disturbed interpersonal relationship as causes of psychological disorders. He even insisted that witches were mentally disturbed and required medical, not theological treatment. So, with the comparison of the Middle Ages and Renaissance period, you can actually see that there was so much of growth. Where in Middle Ages it was talked about the demons or the superstitions like witch hunt, etc. In the Renaissance period, these things were suppressed and more was talked about the humanism and why a particular person behaves in such a way. The curiosity was there. Even John Ware, he talked about the conflict the person was having between the other person, because of which there were psychological disorders, what kind of interpersonal relationship he was sharing, what kind of psychological conflict he was having. Even he mentioned that even the witches or the individuals which were tagged as witches were mentally disturbed and they were not under the influence of some demons or some evil spirits. Now, let's talk about the Age of Reason and Enlightenment. So, the 17th and the 18th century were known as the Age of Reason and Enlightenment. In this particular time, the scientific method replaced faith and dogma as the ways of understanding abnormal behavior. In the Middle Ages, people were talking about the demonology and superstitions. Then, in the Renaissance period, people started tagging it. Okay, it's not the witch hunt or it's not the superstitions, it's not these things which relate to the abnormal behavior, but it is the mental disorder. And in the Age of Reason and Enlightenment, that is the 17th and 18th century, the scientific method replaced this faith and dogma. So people started realizing that we have to look for the scientific methods. There is a scientific reason behind the abnormal behavior of an individual. So the growth of a scientific attitude towards psychological disorders in the 18th century contributed to the reform movement and to increased compassion for people who suffered from these disorders. Reforms of asylums were initiated in both Europe and America. One aspect of the reform movement was the new inclination for deinstitutionalization, which placed emphasis on providing community care for recovered mentally ill individuals. So you can observe in this 2 centuries, people started accepting the abnormal behavior. They started accepting the mentally ill individuals. There were the reform movements, which was about to increase the compassion for the people who were the sufferers of these disorders. There were asylums which were initiated to incline more towards the deinstitutionalization, to emphasize on providing the community care to the individuals who have just recovered from the mental illness. So the people were growing with their thoughts, the people were growing with the idea of the abnormal behavior, with the idea of the abnormal psychology. Then let's see the interactional or biopsychosocial approach. In recent years, there has been a convergence of these approaches, which has resulted in an interactional or biopsychosocial approach. So, according to biopsychosocial approach, all three factors, that is biological, psychological and social, these three play an important role in influencing the expression and outcome of psychological disorder. Biological, suppose a person is biologically not well, is having some or the other disease. Psychological, the person is having stress because of that. Social, people are discriminating him because of that. Now, all these three factors, biological, psychological, and social, these three will lead to the interaction or disorder, or some expression will be influenced by these three factors and can lead to the psychological disorder. Next, we are going to study about the classification of psychological disorders. The American Psychiatric Association, that is APA, has published an official manual describing and classifying various kinds of psychological disorders. The current version of it, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 5th edition, which we also call as DSM-5, presents discrete clinical criteria which indicate the presence or absence of disorders. The classification scheme officially used in India and elsewhere is the 10th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, that is ICD-10, which is known as the ICD-10 classification of abnormal behavior and mental disorders. It was prepared by the WHO, that is World Health Organization. For each disorder, a description of mean clinical features or symptoms and of other associated features, including diagnostic guidelines, is provided in the scheme. So APA was the one who published the official manual to describe the various kind of psychological disorders, and its current version is the DSM-5, which talks about the discrete clinical criteria and tells us if with these particular characteristics a psychological disorder is present or absent. And the 10th revision, which is used in India, is the International Classification of Diseases, that is ICD-10 classification of behavior and mental disorders, and it all was prepared by the WHO. Now, let's see what are the factors underlying abnormal behavior. So, there are two types of factors, biological and psychological factors. Biological factors can be subdivided into physiological and genetic factors, whereas the psychological factors, which can be subdivided into psychodynamic, sociocultural, cognitive, humanistic, existential, and behavioral factors. Now, let's see each one of them. Biological factors are having two subdivisions, biochemical or physiological basis, and the second is genetic factors. So, the biological factors, it influences all aspects of our behavior. A wide range of biological factors such as faulty genes, endocrine imbalances, malnutrition, injuries, and other conditions may interfere with abnormal behavior. These factors may be potential causes of this kind of behavior, and they can interfere with the normal development and functioning of the human body. So, if there is some faulty gene or there are some endocrine imbalances, anything related to the physiological function of a person, we consider that to be the biological factor. Now, let's read about the biochemical or physiological basis. So, biological researchers have found that psychological disorders are often related to problems in the transmission of messages from one neuron to the another. So, in chapter number 3, we have already read about that how one neuron takes the message to the another neuron in grade 11. So if there is some problem during the transmission of these messages from one neuron to the another, a tiny space called synapse separates one neuron from the next, and the messages must move across that space. When an electrical impulse reaches a neuron's ending, the nerve ending is stimulated to release a chemical called a neurotransmitter. Now, the studies indicate that abnormal activity by certain neurotransmitters can lead to specific psychological disorders. Anxiety disorders have been linked to low activity of neurotransmitter, that is GABA, schizophrenia to excess activity of dopamine, and depression to low activity of serotonin. So a lot of studies have been done and which indicates that when there is some issue with the neurological part, maybe the message is not transmitted properly or maybe the neurotransmission has not take place properly, the release of neurotransmitter has fluctuated. For example, if GABA is showing the low activity, then the anxiety disorders were observed. If the excess activity of dopamine was observed, then schizophrenia was seen. If serotonin activity was less, then depression was observed. Now, what can be the genetic factors? Genetic factors have been linked to bipolar and related disorders, schizophrenia, intellectual disability, and other psychological disorders. Researchers have not, however, been able to identify the specific genes that are culprits. We are still working on it, that what are the particular genes which lead to a particular behavior. It appears that in most cases, no single gene is responsible for a particular behavior or a psychological disorder. In fact, many genes combine to help bring about our various behaviors and emotional reaction, both functional and dysfunctional. Although there is sound evidence to believe that genetic or biochemical factors are involved in mental disorders as diverse as schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, etc., but biology alone cannot account for the most mental disorders. So in genetic factors, they talk about that it is possible that it is coming from the heredity. It is possible that it is because of the cluster of genes a particular person is exhibiting a particular type of behavior. But we are still conducting the studies over it and we are still not sure about it. Now, let's see the various psychological models to study the abnormal behavior. So, these models maintain that psychological and interpersonal factors, they both have a significant role to play in abnormal behavior. Now, what can be the psychological or the interpersonal factors? These factors can include maternal deprivation, that is, the separation of an individual from the mother, or lack of warmth or stimulation during early years of life, faulty parent-child relationship, that is rejection, overprotection, or maybe the parents are over permissive, or a faulty discipline is there, or the maladaptive family structure such as inadequate or disturbed family. For example, if the parent and child are not in a good conversation, or the parents are divorced, or maybe there's a single parent, so these can be the factors which can lead to abnormal behavior. So let's study the first psychological model, that is psychodynamic model. Now, psychodynamic model is one of the oldest and one of the most famous of the modern psychological model. Now, the psychodynamic therapist, they believe that behavior, whether it is normal or abnormal, it is determined by psychological forces within the person of which he or she is not consciously aware. These internal forces are considered dynamic. What does that mean? That they interact with one another. And the interaction of these forces give shape to our behavior, thoughts, and emotions. Abnormal symptoms are viewed as the result of conflict between these forces. This model was first formulated by Freud, who believed that three central forces shape our personality. That is, instinctual needs, drives, and impulses are shaped by it, rational thinking by ego, and moral standards by superego. Freud stated that abnormal behavior is a symbolic expression of unconscious mental conflict that can be generally traced to early childhood or infancy. Now, the psychodynamic model, being the oldest and the most famous, talks about that whether the behavior of an individual is normal or abnormal, but the behavior is dependent on the psychological forces of which he or she is not consciously aware. What are these forces? These three forces are id, ego, and superego. Id is the force which drives your instinctual needs, drives, and impulses. Ego takes care of your rational thinking, and superego takes care of your moral standards. For example, if a child wants to have an ice cream, now need or want, this will be by the force that is id. The child thinks rationally, it's winters, should I actually be eating it? Now, this is the work of the ego. He's thinking rationally. Moral standards. Should I be eating it? My mom will scold me. This is against my morals to do something which my mom has asked me not to do. This thing will be controlled by the force that is superego. This was exactly what Freud wanted to explain with the psychodynamic model. Next model is the behavioral model. This model states that both normal and abnormal behaviors are learned, and psychological disorders are the result of learning maladaptive ways of behaving. The model concentrates on behaviors that are learned through conditioning and proposes that what has been learned can be unlearned. Learning can take place by classical conditioning, that is temporal association, in which two events repeatedly occur close together in time. Operant conditioning, that is behavior is followed by a reward, and social learning, that is learning by imitating others' behaviors. These three types of conditioning account for behavior, whether adaptive or maladaptive. So, in short, the behavioral model talks about that no matter the individual is having a normal or abnormal behavior, both of these types of behaviors are learned. They learn this particular behavior by imitating someone else. So this can be learned via conditioning. The conditioning can be classical conditioning, operant conditioning, or social learning. Classical conditioning, when two events are occurring again and again in the same sequence. So we learn, for example, in grade 11, we learned about classical conditioning, where the dog was first introduced with a bell. This stimuli was given, and after that the food was produced, due to which he used to salivate. So the two events were happening together in the sequence, and that's why he learned. Operant conditioning, the behavior is followed by a reward. If I say, if you will do this particular thing, I will be rewarding you with a chocolate. So you will tend to do that behavior. And social learning, that is learning by imitating others' behavior. For example, the child learns that we have to greet our elders namaste every time we meet them. How they learned it? By seeing their parents. So this is what the behavioral model talks about. Moving forward is the cognitive model. This model states that abnormal functioning can result from cognitive problems. People may hold assumptions and attitudes about themselves that are irrational and inaccurate. People may also repeatedly think in illogical ways and make overt generalizations. That is, they may draw broad cognitive conclusions which are negative on the basis of a single insignificant event. For example, a lot of time we observe that the students after the PTM, when everyone is saying that you have not scored well, you have not done well in your exams and all, that time the child thinks that maybe I'm not made to study, maybe I'm not able to do the things perfect. These are the negative thoughts. These are the negative conclusions that a child has made about himself. About himself, he has made some assumptions and attitudes which are inaccurate and are irrational, which can lead to abnormal behavior. Now, the fourth one is the humanistic existential model. Now, this model focuses on broader aspects of human existence. Humanists believe that human beings are born with a natural tendency to be friendly, cooperative, and constructive, and are driven to self actualize, that is, to fulfill this potential for goodness and growth. Existentialists believe that from birth we have total freedom to give meaning to our existence or to avoid that responsibility. Those who shirk from this responsibility would live empty, inauthentic, and dysfunctional lives. Next, the fifth one is socio-cultural model. According to the socio-cultural model, abnormal behavior is best understood in the light of the social and cultural forces that influence an individual, as behavior is shaped by societal forces, factors such as family structure and communication, social networks, societal conditions, and societal labels and roles become more important. It has been found that certain family systems are likely to produce abnormal functioning in individual members. So now this model says that what kind of society the person is living in, what kind of culture the person is exposed to, these two forces are going to influence how the person is going to behave, how the person is going to communicate, how the person is going to function. Next model is the diathesis stress model. This model states that psychological disorders develop when a diathesis, that is the biological predisposition to the disorder, is set off by a stressful situation. So whensoever a person is exposed to a diathesis, that is a biological predisposition to the disorder, the person is tend to develop that particular psychological disorder whensoever that particular stressful situation occurs. Now, this model has three components. The first is the diathesis, that is the presence of some biological aberration which may be inherited. Second, is that the diagnosis may carry a vulnerability to develop a psychological disorder. That is, the person is at risk or predisposed to develop that disorder. That means, whensoever that kind of stressful situation will occur, he or she is going to be at risk to develop the psychological disorder. And the third component is the presence of pathogenic stresses, that is, factors or stresses that may lead to psychopathology. If such at-risk persons are exposed to these stressors, their predisposition may actually evolve into a disorder. This model has been applied to several disorders including anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. In addition to the biological and psychosocial factors, sociocultural factors such as war, violence, group prejudice and discrimination, economic and employment problems and rapid social change also put stress on most of us and can lead to psychological problems in some individuals. And with this, I would like to end the first part of this chapter. In my next video, I will be talking about the various psychological disorders like anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorders, somatic disorders, etc. Please stay tuned, and if you like this video, please like, share, comment and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.